President Trump is having some sort of a meltdown, it seems. It all comes after CNN and the New York Times reported that the U.S.'s strikes on the Iranian nuclear sites only set them back a few months. He took to Truth Social to call for those reporters to be canned, writing, "Fake news reporters from CNN and the New York Times should be fired immediately. Bad people with evil intentions." He's also threatening to sue both outlets. His attorney sent a letter demanding the reports be retracted. A CNN spokesperson says the network is rejecting the claims the report is false. The Times also responded, writing, "No retraction is needed. No apology will be forthcoming. We told the truth to the best of our ability. We will continue to do so." It all comes after White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the individual who leaked the reports to the press should be in jail.
Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth slammed Fox News reporter Jennifer Griffin during his press conference yesterday. Let's watch.
Do you have certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Fordo Mountain, or some of it, because there were satellite photos that showed more than a dozen trucks there 2 days in advance? Are you certain none of that highly enriched uranium was moved?
Of course, we're watching every single aspect, but Jennifer, you've been about the worst, the one who misrepresents the most intentionally. What the president says. I'm familiar.
Report about the ventilation shafts on Saturday night. And in fact, I was the first to describe the B-2 bombers, the refueling, the entire mission with great accuracy. So I take issue with that.
I appreciate you acknowledging that this was the most successful mission based on operational security that this department has done since you've been here, and I appreciate that.
Griffin is a longtime Pentagon press corps member. Fox's chief political analyst Britt Hume came to Griffin's defense, saying on the airways that she did not deserve to be attacked. And didn't they used to work together?
They did.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I know some people internally at Fox who are not big fans of Jennifer Griffin, so I'm not super surprised to see Pete go after her there, the defense secretary. But this CNN and New York Times reporting was problematic because they did not include the full context regarding that intelligence report that they cited in their initial stories. They did not include, for example, that the report was issued with, quote, low confidence and that it was preliminary. They only added those statements after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth indicated that that was the case during a press conference. So they were effectively forced to include that context and never apologized for not including that in the first place. And some of their anchors, in fact, including CNN's Kate Baldwin, claimed that it was always in the report that it was issued with low confidence. So I think that they've really bungled this.
You know, I would disagree, and I hear what you're saying, but they did mention CNN's reporting that this was an initial finding. And we know with reporters, oftentimes you're getting information sometimes where, in this case, it was likely leaked, and because it wasn't out yet, of course, right? So you're presenting it with some caution, saying this is initial findings, this is what we know right now. And that's what reporters do. We go after stories and we have sources, and often long-time sources. It's been vetted. And both CNN and the New York Times have come out saying that they stand by the reporting because they did mention it was initial findings. Trump himself was contradictory at one point, saying, more uncertain what was going on and what had happened, and then another time saying obliterated. So he himself has gone back and forth. What he's upset about is that it was leaked, and he wants the fear to be there for those who did leak the information. He wants to plant that seed of fear, and for the reporters as well.
Well, I think people who leak classified information or intelligence reports should be fearful. That is against the law. It's also against the duty that you swear to uphold when you go into the government.
Well, it happens all the time.
That doesn't mean it's acceptable, though. And look, if we're talking about what administrations should do to leakers, we saw what the Obama administration did. They spied on reporters, including Fox News' James Rosen, to try to find out who was sharing information with him so that they could put those leakers in jail. That was the precedent set by the previous administration. So the idea that Trump is somehow out of bounds, as we suggested in this script, for indicating, or Caroline Leavitt rather, for indicating that people who leak classified information should be in jail, that is the standard that is upheld by the law.
Trump has repeatedly targeted media that he does not like what they have to say. So anything that does not go with his agenda, in this case, obliterated, Iran's nuclear sites. So because they didn't do exactly what he would have wanted them to say, had they done something differently, and reported it the way he would like, we wouldn't even be having this
accurate
conversation. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. And also, I think it's interesting that there were 3 reporters on that byline, and he targets 1.
Well, she has a history. Natasha Bertrand has a history of getting things wrong.
Okay, fair. Why isn't he upset with, if that's your case, I'm not going to go there because I don't know, why isn't he upset with the AP and ABC News, who also had similar reporting? Why isn't he upset with everyone? Why does he target 1 person out of the 3 bylines and the other 2 outlets? Just curious.
Yeah, Natasha Bertrand's an easy target because she has a history of getting things wrong. She was one of the individuals who was loudest on the Russian collusion narrative. And then ahead of the 2020 presidential election, she published the report at Politico of the 51 intelligence officials who claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop was the product of Russian disinformation, despite the fact that they had no actual direct evidence to suggest that that was the case. So she should have never published that report in the first place. A lot of people in the industry believe, and this is, a little bit of media insider baseball, that she has a lot of interesting sources in the CIA that basically leak classified information to her to push a certain narrative, not to report the truth, but in order to leak selective items to make certain individuals look a certain way. And look, the reality is that the assessments from the American intelligence apparatus, the Israeli intelligence apparatus, and Iran itself have all indicated that there was significant damage to these nuclear facilities that didn't set Iran back a few months, but years. So the problem is the reporting was initial, but when you get an initial intelligence finding, you're supposed to go verify that. If they had actually reached out to additional sources or talked to people within the intelligence community, they would have found that that report was rejected by other parts of the intelligence apparatus and that it was issued with low confidence. But they clearly didn't do that. They were more interested in rushing to get this report out to make the president and the military, frankly, look like they hadn't done their job.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you that media rushes sometimes to put things out there. I think we all know that. Everyone wants to have the breaking news information. It is up to each individual media outlet to do the discernment, meaning every time you get a source and information gets to you, you don't automatically run with it. The fact that they also had 2 other reporters on the byline and that it's gone through certain processes would lead you to believe that they've done the vetting. You're not just putting out a quick tweet. Right? So they're a national news outlet that I know national news has messed up. I'm not saying it hasn't. But I think we have to also keep in mind that there are pieces of discernment that happens within the process within news. Not every piece of information that comes to you do you report, right? And they mentioned initial findings. That has happened all the time. President Trump himself releases things, even in his last term, initial findings. So I think that we oftentimes want to just target media when they don't do exactly as we want them to do. And this is an example, case in point, of Trump doing so.
Up next, are cell phones in schools a thing of the past? Well, one Democratic lawmaker wants that to be the case. More on that next.